Good evening on this yucky night. I'm just trying to get my agenda. Would you like some help? No, I've got it right here. I should have opened it before, but I didn't. Okay, pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, as amended on March 28, 2025, this meeting will be conducted in person and as a courtesy via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided, the meeting/hearing will not be suspended or terminated if there are tech problems unless required by law. Viewers can visit the local scene.media/Duxbury, formerly PAC TV, to watch a video replay of this meeting on Duxbury YouTube. Good evening. And thank you for kind of a yucky night with the sleet and whatever, but we are going to just move right through and see if we can all get home before anything freezes more out there. Mary, do you have any announcements or anything did you want to just let them know about the snow and ice and how we're going to be looking at that until the end of the week?
Do you mind if I do that after? Because I have some, I want to give it.
Absolutely. Sounds like a plan.
If it's okay with you, we're going to be covering, we have two presenters coming this evening, and I can do my stuff at the end. We have Matt Hines, our town planner, who is here to talk about best storage. And then we have Jeannie Horn, our HR director, who's coming in to talk about Article 4.
Well, she's not going to Zoom, she's going to show up.
I believe she'll be here in person. So if we can start with Matthew.
Why don't we get you
then I'm going to
get home?
Then I'll talk about snow and ice and a couple of other things I just wanted to bring you guys up to speed on.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Matt, why don't you come up here so we can all see you? That would be great if you don't mind.
Did you bring any more of those big maps with you? I'll take one.
Yeah, actually.
I gave it away to,
And this would be
Suzanne.
Article 18 in the annual town meeting warrants, in case you wanted to just look at any of the language in the warrant.
I should charge $1 for it.
It's still not labeled right as far as. I'll give you a buck. You don't have a label on it as far as your properties need. No.
No. Were you the one who was asking about the protected land? Was that somebody?
Oh, what?
The protected, last time I was here, somebody was asking about the protected land.
Oh, yeah, how much of it was Duxbury anyway?
Oh, yeah. So we have a map.
Matt, for the folks that are online, did you email out that map that you're distributing so that these folks here?
Yes.
Oh, you actually shaking her head. Okay, great.
Matt, I think you actually emailed it earlier in the week, right?
Yeah,
Wonderful.
this is a bigger copy. Yeah.
And I'm looking for 18.
You can read it. I can
Yes, please.
read some.
And for the
Yeah.
group's benefit, I did ask Matt earlier in the week if electric vehicles that exceed 100 kilowatts of capacity would fall under this provision, and he said it did not.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Why is that? Maybe not. That's a
Oh, yeah.
great.
You want me to stand over here? Is there any place I should go?
Wherever you're-
That's good for
Wherever you're
you.
comfortable, I just didn't want you talking behind everybody.
Probably I don't know if the people out there want to see me or just hear me.
You can slide that over. I think it's on wheels, right? And we're to the other direction. There we go. That's fabulous.
Like this.
The owl.
Always does. Yeah, so as far as the car issue, it's honestly something I hadn't thought about, that I hadn't realized that some EVs actually do go over 100 kilowatt hours in terms of, I guess, the capacity of their batteries. But yeah, the bylaw doesn't apply to electric vehicles. It just applies to sort of more stationary, projects. Basically in general, it would be projects that are really kind of there for a commercial purpose to sell electricity back to the grid. It's not for the most part, it doesn't apply to somebody who's just got a small battery that they're using kind of as a backup, like a backup generator for the house, or as a backup system, maybe attached to like solar panels on a roof or something, where they've got a battery that receives the electricity and stores it for later.
When the language says that, blah, 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 batteries charge, discharge, store energy, batteries utilized in consumer products are excluded from these requirements. So would a car be considered a consumer product? Because that's the only get out of jail on this.
Yeah, possibly. I guess to my reading of it, it definitely doesn't apply to EVs. We could check with town council, I suppose.
I
Pretty
would
feel confident that
suggest
does not apply
that
to
it-
EVs.
they might want to amend to make it clear. I mean, if they're, all these cars do fit into the wattage category and excluding them car or a vehicle that is being used that's not a commercial vehicle. So would it include commercial vehicles? I just think it's kind of a loophole that you might want to address.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's,
I mean, we don't give people credit for assuming
yeah,
what you have.
I think what's difficult with a lot of the zoning, laws or proposed, verbiage, right, is that it's always starting with the good intention and trying, some of this could be very complex and you can't catch it all, right? But it's almost, if there's any ambiguity that would open up a possible litigation, right, that is of concern. So I'm not a lawyer and I'm also not a zoning expert, but I think that from a financial perspective, being highly sensitive to being very specific and as specific as possible when we're doing something that could potentially have some controversy and or litigation associated with it. And I'm sure the council has looked at this and have got, or actually that question, has town council looked at it
she has, yeah.
and given their approval as to the verbiage and the risk involved with perhaps the potential for litigation.
Yeah, I mean, originally, sort of the template or the basis of this zoning bylaw actually came from another town. I think it's West Newbury, another town in Massachusetts that passed a similar bylaw maybe about a year ago. And the Attorney General apparently approved that one about 6 months ago or so.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of a good, certainly that's a promising starting point.
And you had mentioned that when you did your first presentation, my only concern about that is that we tend to be, each town tends to be so different from the next that, right, there's different concerns,
Yeah.
there's different, culture, there's all that kind of stuff. So it's not a one size fits all. It's just by kind of comment to the zoning law in its entirety. And it's not just best, it really pertains to most.
Yeah. I think so kind of to backtrack to your previous question, town council has reviewed this and feels it's fine for the most part. She has expressed a bit of concern about two aspects of it. The noise, kind of the audio and noise control verbiage that we added to it. The planning board decided to be pretty strict in that regard. And so, I think for good reasons. And so, but town council expressed concern that could possibly be, could be vulnerable to a court or litigation just because it might be stricter than is reasonable. And then also I think the bylaw specifies like 100-foot setback, but if it's adjacent or within a residential area or adjacent to residential property, then it's actually a 200-foot setback, which is a pretty big setback for zoning. And so town council expressed a little bit of hesitation about that as well.
Okay.
But for the most part, town council, has kind of given us the thumbs up, so to speak. It came originally, most of the text came from what she gave us, again, the West Newbury one that she provided to us, which does seem like a pretty good starting point since it's been approved by the Attorney General and it seems reasonable.
Would it, Chief, I'm sorry, would it be appropriate, because I know that some of you guys have heard the conversation from last night, but I don't know if the folks online understand the how these areas of town were identified and selected, and why they have a lot of green spots all over the place. Would it be appropriate to have Matt start at the beginning? And
Yep,
describe
I'm
that?
sorry, I jumped in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
fine.
followed.
Oh, well, these things happen.
It might be good to actually kind of go back to the beginning, just really briefly explain that, and probably most of you know this, but the kind of the original impetus for this is because, of course, a battery energy storage, well, I'll call it a BESS project, was proposed on, I think on West Street, I believe.
Yes, Westwood.
So that of course created controversy and a back, people worried about the impact of that and it raised interest, especially in, I think throughout the town, but especially in that neighborhood, of course. And so at that point, soon after that, after the litigation and so forth, which the town basically lost, or at least the town lost the first round of the litigation, some of those residents came to the town government and said, what can we, let's look at our zoning bylaws and see if we can better regulate this, considering that, the town of Duxbury lost the case in court. And so therefore, it seems as though the town is very vulnerable, to a best project being built anywhere in the town is more or less what the court determined, or almost anywhere. It seemed reasonable to the point of view of these residents, and also kind of to me, I think to a lot of people, to try to regulate best projects to some extent so that we're not completely vulnerable, and at least we've got some regulation to maybe prevent them from certain areas, to prohibit them in certain areas, to restrict the noise, to protect the views, the buffers, the setbacks, and the safety, and all kinds of stuff like that. So that's kind of where this came from originally. And then as far as the areas which you can see on the map, the areas where this bylaw would propose to allow BESS and prohibit BESS, essentially, Duxbury, as you know, does not have much industrial areas or even much commercial areas. Essentially, Duxbury is zoned about 98%. If you count the planned development zones as residential, which essentially they really are in reality on the ground, Duxbury is zoned approximately 98% residential between the RC zone and the 3 PD zones. And then you've got, maybe the Dune zone is about 1%, and the 3 neighborhood business zones are, I think, even about 1%. I think it's actually even less. Of course, there are various kind of overlay zones as well for all kinds of things, environmental stuff and so on. But as far as your kind of the base zones, as we call them, your primary zones or zoning districts, to use the full term, it's about 98% residential, which of course reflects the reality on the ground. Duxbury is overwhelmingly residential, primarily single family houses with, of course, some, apartment buildings and condos and a few other things. And so because of that, there are not many places where we can kind of, if we know we have to allow best projects in some parts of the town, that we don't have a lot of alternatives. I mean, from some other litigation, there was a case called Tracer, which I think involved Waltham, and basically the result of that kind of decision by the courts was that for solar, but best, I think the same legal principle seems to apply. You cannot restrict it to just 1 or 2%. So it's still ambiguous as far as how much of the town you need to allow BESS in, and it's still, the case law and so forth is still evolving, but it seems as though 1 to 2% is definitely not allowable. And so we thought we needed to go to at least 5%, and probably more like 10% or higher. And so that was kind of the impetus for why we said, okay, it's not enough to just say, just the business zones or just some tiny area. It needs to be a fairly substantial amount of the town. And so then with that in mind, it just kind of seemed logical to say, okay, we have the RC zone, we've got the planned development zones. There's no ideal solution here because they're all residential, but at least in theory, the original concept of the planned development zones is that they can take a little more density. They can take these so-called planned developments, with mixed uses. The whole concept of those PD zones from, I think, back in the 70s, apparently, was to allow a bit more uses and density potentially and so forth.
But for residential.
I think actually a little bit of, in theory, the mixed uses can allow a little bit of office and maybe other things if you kind of dig into the zoning bylaws. But of course, in practice, it's been almost entirely residential. Yeah.
And everybody, there's varying opinions here, and that's fine. But I find it unbelievable that we're trying to earmark 10% for battery storage when 3% is what we allow for a dress shop. But we think it's okay to have 10% for batteries, big battery storage, but you can't open a flower store in 97% of the town.
Yeah.
I think that's my question. Well, my question isn't this, when it gets over that 100 mark, isn't it commercial? Isn't the storage of electricity and saving it and then using it later, that's a sale. it's a sale. It may not have a dollar sign on it, but it's a sale.
Sure.
Isn't it commercial?
Do you mean for personal consumption? So say you had, because this is a question that I had for you, Matt. So if we have a property that has solar panels on their home and they're generating more electricity than they're utilizing, and they want to have a battery storage unit on their property, I don't know if that's allowed and subject to this bylaw, and is that what you're referring to as a commercial operation? Because in my mind, I would think that that's still private consumption, that property owner would be generating electricity, storing it for their own use, and that would not be considered
And I
commercial.
think that's the difference, because we asked at the public meeting about the solar, and they said, well, the solar is not in this at all, but it's still a storage of electricity.
Mhm,
And I agree that if I have solar panels on my roof,
Mhm.
I should be able to store that electricity, right? And
Use
use
it.
it.
In theory, because when I look at a property, of course, I look at a property and I think from an assessing standpoint, what's the composition of that property? So we have a lot of folks in town that have generators on their property, right? And yeah, probably all of you. And so,
And somebody down who wish they
you know,
had generators.
yeah, exactly. Is the next step for folks to now invest in these, generator size or personal size battery storage units where they're generating electricity from solar, and in the summer, in the winter months when they're covered with snow and they're not generating electricity, that they could then draw on that
Yeah,
battery
exactly right.
storage.
Exactly right.
And so does that in some cases then replace the need for a generator for some properties? And does that become taxable like a generator is?
But
So I have a lot of
And does this
understanding.
limit they're available to do this?
So,
Mm,
yeah, for the most part, this would not limit that because the cutoff is 100 kilowatt hours. So anything below that, the bylaw doesn't apply to anything below that. And from what I've read about this, typically if a house has like a backup battery, which in most cases would probably be attached to a solar panel, from what I understand, although in the future it may become more common just to be backup as kind of generators. Those are typically, even for a big house, even if it's kind of a big thing that could power the whole house for a while, it's probably going to be more like maybe 20 or 30 or 40, be unusual, even if it's maybe a small business or a series of houses.
Well, but as
Usually
Mike
be
has said,
under
the
100.
cars are more than that. The cars are more than 100.
Yeah, that's surprising.
So,
That's interesting.
so
Just
it
to
doesn't
clarify,
make sense.
I think most of the cars are less than 100. It's only
yeah.
some of the really, I think
And-
only some of the really big EVs are above 100.
But
Yeah.
some are.
Yeah.
But
But regardless, this doesn't apply to
It doesn't
EVs.
apply to
Yeah.
cars. so
But it
that's
doesn't
not-
say that.
That is to my point,
Yes, exactly. We're in cahoots.
we're in cahoots, because again,
So in any case, yeah, so for the so in most cases, in virtually every case, if it's somebody just who's got a battery at their house, maybe for an apartment building or for a small business, it's going to be less than 100 megawatt hours. I mean, if it's for an apartment building or a larger building, maybe not. But of course, if once it gets over 100 megawatt hours, it probably does make some sense to regulate it, because at that point it's so powerful. You don't just want it in somebody's basement, or you want to have maybe better regulation for that kind of thing. So in that regard, I think it does make sense.
so back to the selection process, Matt, when you went to identify the land that was it, how was your selection process? How was that created? How was that developed, and the discussion behind each of these parcels of land that were identified? I noticed there's one down here on Standish Shore, which is a pretty
Great.
populated.
Standish reservation.
Pardon me?
I think that's the monument.
No, the monument's past, monument's on the other side.
It's
three things.
Kelso. And I don't,
Oh, right.
it's which, is. I don't understand that, because I don't think it's planned development or a neighborhood, it's certainly not a neighborhood business.
Yeah, so it just comes from the zoning districts, the zones in town. So essentially it's the bylaw proposes to allow best projects in the three, in plan development zones 1, 2, and 3. And then in the 3 neighborhood business, I think it's neighborhood business 1, 2, and light, I think those are the 3 NB zones. But then also it prohibits best projects in the residential compatibility zone, the RC zone, and also in some of the overlay zones, which are seen as kind of environmentally sensitive. And so that map essentially is the where once you sort of calculate the areas, the zones where it will be allowed, and then you subtract out the overlay zones where it would be prohibited, that map is the result. And I should give credit actually to my assistant, the admin assistant in the planning department, Emily, who's actually got more skill than me in mapping and the computer and so forth. And so she's the one who actually did the map. So I'm grateful to her. But in any case, that map is the result. So the map, those sort of areas, they have nothing to do with the properties in the sense that we didn't make those choices on the basis of any of the properties. So it's like it had nothing to do like who owns water properties. It's just strictly coming from the actual zones.
So could that be, now that the zone, the best zone has been established or identified, identified. So a energy company comes in and they say we want to develop a storage system. Would that then allow them to pick up the map and say, this area down here on Standish Shore looks like a possibility, and would that then be considered automatically a potential site? Or I guess I'm trying to understand the long range implications of using the zoning.
They'd have to buy it first, wouldn't they? They'd have to buy it.
They could lease it.
Well, they'd have to buy it or lease it or whatever,
I
yeah.
don't think they could
Right.
just decide.
But I guess what I'm saying is.
That'd be great.
I hope not.
I'm just trying to get to the logical conclusion.
Yeah.
Maybe a property on Standish Shore may be $100 million, and that wouldn't be perhaps a attractive location.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to understand what the potential is, because many of the areas that are in the green are in, again, residential sections of town.
Yeah.
But I understand your logic behind the zoning.
Yeah, so basically they would, I mean, obviously, of course, the property owner has to agree to sell it or lease it or whatever the case may be, but yeah, I mean, obviously we have the zoning bylaw imposes a lot of rules and regulations to control the form and a lot of aspects of what it would be. But yeah, basically they would be allowed to do best projects in all of those areas within the rules, and they'd have to go through the application process to get a special permit, administrative site plan approval, and so forth. But yeah, they would be allowed.
What about the rights of a property owner? I mean, they own this land. Why don't they have the right to use it the way they want?
Well, I mean-
But that's always, I guess that's always sort of the
I mean,
quandary.
it's their land.
Right, I have, well,
Right, but
where I
you're-
live, I couldn't put a store on my land.
You're
I haven't got that
restricted what
right.
you do with it.
Yeah,
That's
you're
what zoning
subject
is.
to, you're stuff, yeah, subject to.
So it's a zoning issue,
So it's a zoning issue.
but this isn't a zone, they haven't zoned this. They haven't restricted this to a zoning area.
So we're not creating a new zoning district because we're just defining this on the basis of our
It's a
existing zoning
permissible
districts.
use.
But in a sense, it kind of amounts to sort of the same thing because we are saying where they would be allowed and where they'd be prohibited. And so, yeah, I mean, but I guess keep in mind, at the moment, at least kind of based on the result of the litigation between, Duxbury and that developer, at the moment, from kind of the judge's decision and so forth, it seems as though the entire town or not counting certain, maybe environmentally sensitive issues or certain areas or certain particular things, but for the most part, virtually most of the town at this point is open to a best project being located anywhere. And there's nothing other than environmental factors and rules. There's not much we can do to prevent it. So, I know some people might say, oh my God, this is, you're proposing to allow best in about 10%, this is about 10% of the, about 10% of the town's area. But at the moment, without this zoning bylaw, we're allowing BESS in, maybe about, 99% of the town's area or so.
Can I ask a quick question? So when you say, so right now we don't have any guardrails to regulate this. So the intent is to put this forth in order to have some regulation enforcement. But does that mean in the absence of this, that people have the ability right now to do it by right? And the primary purpose of this is to force it to go by special permit?
So at the moment, they wouldn't really have the ability to do it by right because our zoning bylaws at the moment don't allow it. But they could essentially, it kind of amounts to something similar because we're so legally vulnerable to them just saying, the court has said we can't prohibit it. And so in that sense, they could easily come in. I don't know what the legal process would be. That'd be a question for town council, but essentially we're very vulnerable and they could come in and put go through some legal I don't know if that actually be litigation, but go through some legal process to kind of put a BESS in, virtually anywhere in town. I mean, leaving aside sort of maybe environmental rules and so forth, which could block a lot.
But so right now, you're saying, JR, that it's by right?
I think it is. I think that's.
I wouldn't say, usually by right, the term
Really?
by right usually refers to something that the zoning bylaw specifically allows without a special permit. And the zoning bylaw doesn't specifically allow it. So I wouldn't use the phrase by right, but in practice, it amounts to something somewhat similar, I guess.
This isn't much different than when we dealt with the cannabis dispensary issues, isn't it? I mean, it was.
We prohibited it.
Yeah, but initially it was one of those things that they could have gone, if we didn't have a specific spot for them, they could have gone wherever they wanted.
Well, as long as it was
until we-
a commercial zone, because it was a store. So it couldn't have been in a neighborhood because it was a commercial use.
But statute also allowed you to prohibit it. And what Matt's saying is that
Yeah.
statute doesn't allow the town to prohibit this. So that's sort of one of the key differences, yeah.
Matthew, the one application we've had it's triggered all of this. Was somebody basically saying they had the right, there was nothing in the bylaw that said you couldn't. He wanted to build a battery storage facility on the land on West Street, I believe.
Yeah.
We fought it in court apparently, and we didn't win, but they backed away. Is that what's happened to that particular?
Yeah, so the town of Duxbury lost the case because the judge just concluded that.
But wasn't that ripe for appeal? People said that the judgment was odd.
Well, can we just let him finish?
I'm sorry. I know this makes
You
me
could
mad.
just,
You're
the
right.
judge
I'm sorry.
basically said,
Yeah, the judge basically said that because in the judge's mind, these BESS projects are sort of inherently linked to solar power because they just make it, or for that matter, to all kinds of renewable energy because they allow you to store the energy generated from solar, from wind, and then you reuse it later. So they're very well suited to work with solar power, wind power, and so the judge basically said that therefore they fall under this part of MGL. It's I think it's not the Dover Amendment, but it's like kind of the same passage as the Dover Amendment. This part of MGL, which basically says that towns can't do much to limit or prevent, renewable
so basically,
energy
the
projects.
judge said that we had no right to block this man from doing it out of hand.
Yeah.
Now, the person that was applying has walked away from the project, or is it still out there pending?
I think they withdrew the application, I believe.
Yeah.
So from what I understand,
So
they
what you're-
could,
what
they
planning
could
is
still
trying
bring
to
it back.
do is put us in a better position when the next application comes in.
Yeah, or even if this application comes back, possibly.
And either one,
Yeah.
okay.
And also one thing to mention is that at least from what I've learned about this stuff, at this point in time, most of these BESS projects are actually done kind of in conjunction with solar projects, so you might they might propose a big solar array and then there'd be like a BESS kind of in the middle of it or
If
at
you
the edge
have
of it.
already approved a giant solar array, putting this in the middle of it doesn't seem like a big problem.
Exactly, yeah, or even maybe on the edge of it or whatever. But yeah, it'd all be part of the same project. And of course, it makes total sense because the solar array, you want to be able to store that energy.
Correct.
You're not going to use it all on those sunny days. You want to store it for for the night or, whatever, like you store it for when you're gonna maybe need it more.
Can I ask another question? Has the fire department weighed in on this at all in terms of safety concerns, if any?
It's a good question. I have to go back and look at my emails. I think we may have discussed it really briefly with them, but for the most part, they haven't been involved much. But obviously, you raise a valid point. It's from a fire safety point of view, it's very crucial. And also, from a there are other possible health risks in terms of maybe like chemicals, batteries of chemicals. If those chemicals, leach into the ground or dissipate into the air or something, those are issues as well. Yeah.
Well, the fact of the matter is really that if we say we're proponent of renewable energy, like solar or wind, there comes a storage issue that is hand in hand with that, right? I don't know enough about renewable energy to understand if there's a way. I do notice like off of exit 5 on 3, there's that big solar farm by the McDonald's, right? And I don't know in Plymouth, and I don't know where that. What I'm trying to say is there a possibility that towns can consolidate, towns with more industrial or commercial zoning, that we could have some kind of a consolidation of using renewable energy storage in a consolidated way, as opposed to each town or each locality having to have a best zoning. And I just don't know enough about the technology to understand if that's even a possibility.
I think the state and obviously this judge too have kind of taken the position, maybe without explicitly doing so, but have taken the position that every town has to bear kind of some share of the burden, or that every town has to allow it to some extent. I think in practice, the developments are going to happen in areas that developers choose for various reasons. Some cases it might be where land is cheaper, where there's more open space that they can more easily use. In some cases, maybe they might want to be near some major electric transmission lines, possibly. So in practice, it's probably not going to be evenly distributed through every city and town of the Commonwealth. But it's hard to anticipate. I mean, it's from what I've heard, it sounds as though actually quite a few of these solar projects are being proposed in Western Massachusetts.
Which makes sense.
And I guess maybe there's a lot of available land.
Makes sense for us.
From the density perspective, not a question of should be tucked behind a Berkshire, but I think that the
Well, there is a massive array in Carver,
is there
massive.
Yeah, I've heard about
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are pockets on the South Shore that they're by the cranberry bogs, and there are a number of them, right, that seem to be very conducive
Yeah.
to the solar array. And I'm
And just anecdotally, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but in terms of the Carver one, I was at a meeting a couple of weeks ago. And the assessor conveyed to the group that the town is bringing in just over $6 million a year in tax revenue from this massive, I'm not saying that that's what we're looking for here, but it can be a lucrative business if if the conditions are appropriate for it.
So I'm ready to move the question, and I just want to say going in that I'm going to vote against it. Because in this period that we're in, innovation is going to be important. Energy is going to be important, and this will hamper the innovation, I think. So I'm going to vote against it.
So I have a question. If we vote against it, that means, well, if the town votes against it, not just us.
Yeah.
If the town votes against it, that means it's wide open again. Right.
I think that's a fair description. That's what town council said. I mean, I suppose, if a developer wants to propose a best project, if we don't have this bylaw, then they have a little bit of a challenge because they've got to go through whatever the legal process is, and town council could say more about that than I can. They'd have to go through a certain legal process because at the moment our bylaw does not allow best anywhere, and so at least kind of in theory we're prohibiting it, but in reality, I think we're kind of wide open.
I don't see it a lot different than where we allow gas stations. you know, with gas stations, storage of fuels and, you know, all kinds of different things that could potentially, bad things could happen from those. They could
Yeah.
leak, they could
Very much,
explode, they could do all these different things.
Yeah.
But it was zoned for where they could put a gas station right
Yeah.
now. I think, I'm ready to vote.
Matthew, clarification on the map. If you look at these green blotches throughout the map, there are no roads within those. Is this accurate in that this is open space, or did the green just block out the roads of little subdivisions?
It probably just blocks it out.
So there are houses and lots, it's all subdivided up like the area right adjacent to it.
A lot of the ones on Standish don't have a road there. It's landlocked.
Well, there's looking at the bigger blotches of
Yeah.
them. And the planning board has not yet voted, correct?
That's correct, but only because of the blizzard. We were gonna, the intention was to do the vote on, February 23rd, and obviously that didn't happen, obviously.
Well, my question is, do we want to vote before the planning board has even weighed in on it?
I don't think that there's anything that the planning board would say that would change the way I'm gonna vote, so I have no problem
Just a
voting
thought.
down.
When
Yeah.
are they scheduled to?
And it's,
March
and
9th.
we have no
Next
legal, we're not gonna present any legal bias to them. They can vote however they want. I don't think
Yeah, I'm not worried about that. Actually.
yeah, I mean, I think
Everyone
that
see it tonight. We should.
I'd like to get it voted, it's,
I don't have the current article number, so if somebody else wants.
18.
Article.
Move to approve Article 18, amend Town of Duxbury Protected Bylaw zoning on new section 622 battery energy storage systems.
Second,
Okay. Any further discussion? Al?
question?
Aye.
Aye. Ashley? Ashley, you're muted, hon. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna abstain. I just don't think I know enough about it. So I'm gonna abstain.
Teddy?
No.
Chuck?
Chuck, I.
Yeah, no.
Brenda, no.
Betsy, no.
Kathleen.
Okay.
So did I get a 2-4-1?
I was trying to figure that out.
How many people you got here? 1,
Al said yes.
2,
Teddy
3,
said
4, 5, 6.
Did Mark
7.
leave?
Mark left, yeah.
Yeah.
Mark
I
left.
missed one. I'm
Ken
sorry.
vote?
Hang on.
Yeah, he's
All right, let's do it again.
Five.
Yeah,
No,
1,
five.
2, 3, 4, 5.
Five no, 1 abstain, 2 in favor.
5 no. I missed the no. Okay, so it's 2, 5, 1.
Yeah.
2, 5.
Thank you.
Thank you, sorry. This is not against you.
Yeah, I'll take it personally.
There's a lot.
I appreciate having the chance to come and talk to all of you. It's actually a good thing because, we kind of spend so much time with the planning board, just sort of talking among ourselves, or sort of me thinking myself, or talking to kind of the same people in town. So it's actually a really good experience to kind of get out of that shell and talk to, the select board last night and you guys tonight, and sort of get perspectives from people who are new to it.
Ted wants to vote.
Yeah, Teddy, did you have something you wanted to say, Ted?
Yeah, I just, because I voted no, I guess I am really tired of things being handed to us. And this is no reflection on the staff. I think they did a great job outlining this as best they can. But we keep getting handed these fait accomplis from the state. And I guess I'm really tired of that. Do we even know, and in my mind it's a no, do we want battery storage units in this town? And we accept it because the judicial system has said, well, it's wide open if you don't allow it. And I, for one, am saying maybe it's time that we fight these things legally and say, no, we don't want it here. We're stuffing it in here. And with that, I'll shut up.
No, never. Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that will be a fairly popular opinion. Okay, so go home, Matt. You don't want to be out in this weather. And we want to get Jeannie taken care of so she can go home.
And
Why?
we're in a good mood, Gene.
You're gonna leave?
Yeah.
Bring it on.
No, I'm gonna jump in next and over a couple of miscellaneous things. with
Oh,
you
all
guys,
right.
if
Oh,
that's okay.
fine. Okay, yep, sure.
So we're kind of in a no mood right now.
So
This could be a cooling off period.
We start this, with you saying they go first and you're going at the end.
I think Jeannie should have gone
You're
first.
gonna help.
You guys are more positive frame of mind.
Well, you never know.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
So I just have a couple of things that I'd like to go over with you guys.
Okey dokey.
I did ask Linda to modify the agenda for tonight's meeting and for next week's meeting to include a line item for reserve fund transfer requests. So just for point of clarification, the reserve fund for this fiscal year was appropriated with $150,000. We've approved one transfer here for just over $11,000 for installing safety guardrails on the top of one of our buildings, and that was due to a safety and OSHA compliance issue. So there's just over $139,000 left in the Finance Committee's reserve fund. And I want to give you a heads up because this morning exactly. I honestly, when it rains, it pours, I guess. And so I was notified, literally, sleets. I was notified this morning that we have a sewer breach over on Landing Road. And we don't know, I didn't know at the time that I left today the extent of it, but we had to call in a contractor to help perform the repair on this sewer breach, and I don't have all of the particulars, so I'll
What's a
get that.
sewer breach? The pipes burst?
So, yeah, we've got a leak.
Leaky.
Yeah, we've got a leak.
Not a great place to leak.
Nope, not a great substance to leak either. So, and couple that with the fact that we also have a staff member who is leaving our employment at the end of this week, who was overseeing our sewer department. And so oops, I'm sorry. And so what that's going to require is that we're going to have to, until we can replace that position, we're going to have to require engaging outside services like we did a couple of years ago.
Which cost a fortune.
Exactly. So we've got some challenges with respect to our sewer operations. I don't know the full extent right now of the cost of that. And so I'm here tonight to brief you on it so that hopefully next week I'll have a better idea, either next week or in the coming weeks, a better idea on what we're facing for these emergency situations. And I will be asking you guys for a reserve fund transfer to help offset the cost of these issues that we're facing.
Will you have any idea about what kind of overruns we're gonna have from this last storm?
So I'm going to talk about that next.
Okay.
Yeah,
You know,
just
yeah, but I have to say this. This is when we were discussing, you know, the PFAS and the money for the study and all of that, and we cut back on what the sewer department has to maintain what we already own. This is the, I mean, are
This
you
is the
kidding?
outcome. This is the outcome.
Oh, this makes me nuts. That, you know, we have problems in our existing system, but yet we're putting millions into planning for something else.
Those things that are not immediate, right? And that, I think that's the point. It's
Oh, it's not even functional, it's just plans.
Well, the issues become, we are trying to mitigate risk, right? Whether it be PFAS or for other anticipated risks, right? Without perhaps giving the consideration for, again, the actual maintenance of old pipes and so on and so forth that are probably more imminent in our future than some of these planning of risk mitigation. And that's the balancing act, right?
Man, this is Madam
Yes,
Chair.
oh no, I'm sorry, I
Doesn't this
digress.
argument cut both ways? We've got a 48-year-old building that we gave $10 million to 25 years ago to give it another 10 years of life. It's 25 years later. That's the same can we've kicked down the road there that we're kicking down the road there.
Yeah,
We can't ignore these older problems that have been existing for a long time whether it's sewer or schools
Well, I
or
don't
whatever.
disagree. I don't disagree.
I hear,
I
I
think
hear
it's
what you're
an-
saying,
It's
but these pipes burst,
painful reality of where we are.
when the pipes burst or the sewer pipes burst, it presents an immediate,
It has to be fixed.
Agreed.
right?
Yeah, it's a public health issue.
It's a public health issue, whereas,
Pipes
whereas-
burst at Albin School apparently during the storm.
well, that
That
was
wasn't the
that
first.
wasn't that was the,
If I
Yeah,
might
go ahead.
address that, because I think that there was perhaps some misinformation about the Alden School. So the school complex, and I had a conversation with Katie, and so this is secondhand, but I will share it with you. The school complex lost power, as we know, and we know full well that the Alden School does not have a generator. That has been on the capital request plan for a couple of years now to install a generator at the Alden School. So as a result, there was not enough power to heat the building. And so when the power came back on and the heat kicked in, pipes did not burst, but there were some leaks in some valves. And the facilities director was on site and was able to catch that very quickly so that we did not have catastrophic damage at the Alden School as it may have been described. That's not the case at all. We did have some damage to some of our municipal buildings, and so far, the issues that we've been identifying, we have submitted insurance claims, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to get insurance recovery for those repairs.
Great.
Okay. So there wasn't a massive pipe burst at.
although your point is
Yeah,
is certainly exactly
Sure.
in the wheelhouse of this whole thing. This particular one you can't fudge a split pipe or a sewer system that's blowing up.
You can't kick it down the road.
You can't kick it down the road. You can't say, you know what, we'll put that boiler in later. But yet we seem to do other things and spend all kinds of money.
so I'll now couch that with what I think is good news.
It's raining and not snowing.
Well, because I like when this happens. So we had a property, the Miramar property, which
Yes,
did
yeah.
sell back in February. And that property had been tax exempt. So at the time of the sale, it then converted from a tax exempt to a taxable property. So our assessor's office quickly put together, as expected, a pro forma tax bill for the rest of this year through June 30th. So that amounted to just over $36,000 that was sent to Miramar. And they will be on the tax rolls for July 1 for a full year of taxes, which will bring in some additional revenue in the ballpark of $87,000 to $88,000.
Nice.
So
Yay.
that was good
great.
news. Not always good with bad news. However, if I could talk about the snow and ice for a moment.
Gobble that up.
I know, yeah, so.
They're getting a deal, 88,000.
That's based on the sale price of the.
8,750,000.
Exactly. So in any event, all right, so if I could spend a minute talking about snow and ice, because this group has already voted the special town meeting warrant articles as we knew them a few weeks ago. And one of the articles was, the first article, number 1, was supplemental appropriations, which was to replenish the snow and ice account with $200,000. At that time, that was a good number prior to this storm. However, we have since endured Storm Fernando, which has now changed our landscape. So Article 1 on the special right now is proposing $200,000 of free cash to cover the snow and ice deficit. We are going to need to have more funding than that. Article 4 currently proposes to transfer $653,000 of free cash into the stabilization account. So the plan for town meeting is that we will be reducing Article 4 and not transferring a full $653,000 into stabilization, but we will utilize some of that funding in order to deal with Article 1, which is snow and ice. What may be some good news is I just handed out a sheet for you.
I just texted it to everybody that's out there.
Excellent, thank you.
No worries.
I want to share with this group that there may be a possibility for us to recover some of the costs of this storm removal. As we all know, the governor declared a state of emergency. That does not automatically unlock funding, but what it does is it unlocks the opportunity for some federal relief dollars from FEMA to trickle down to communities who've had extraordinary expenses as a result of that emergency. So we are working with MEMA right now, as well as all of our department heads, to compile the cost of our this most recent storm. I do not have those costs available to discuss with you guys today. Payroll is still being processed right now in terms of the overtime hours, and we're still waiting on invoices from a number of the contractors that we had to call in to assist us. But we have a deadline of Friday to send in a preliminary cost estimate to MEMA. And what is happening is that MEMA is collecting these initial damage assessments from all of the impacted communities that are due on Friday. MEMA then compiles them to see if they meet the minimum thresholds that would unlock the ability for federal relief. So this handout that I just gave to you, I just wanted to explain that on the left-hand side, you'll see that there's a statewide threshold of $13.6 million. In order for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to apply to the federal government, they have to have had in total at least $13.6 million of expenses from all of the communities for snow removal for this one storm. In addition to that, each individual county is assigned a minimum threshold. So all of the communities in that county collectively have to meet their threshold in order to be potentially included in this federal relief dollars. So for example, Barnstable County at the very top at 1.1 million. If collectively the communities of Barnstable County spent less than that, then none of their dollars would count towards the statewide threshold. So the counties have to meet their thresholds first, and collectively it has to meet the statewide threshold in order to be eligible for public assistance dollars through FEMA. We're hoping that that is going to be the case, and that we will be able to apply for and potentially see relief. Typically, MEMA covers 75% of eligible expenses. There are items, costs that we incur that are not eligible. One of them typically is, for example, the meals. So we know that we had National Guard staff, and we knew that part of our responsibility was to make sure that we were feeding the resources that came here. Those are not eligible costs, but certainly contracted snow removal and overtime that we pay our staff is eligible. So we're in the process of compiling all of that. It is a long process, so we're hopeful at some point that we will see the potential for relief. But that won't materialize for quite some time.
What about damage to some of the trucks? Does that count?
So we are listing everything in our initial damage assessment. We're even listing the property damage that I mentioned a moment ago that was maybe potentially covered by insurance, because if we don't receive the insurance proceeds, we want to make sure that we have at least listed it. But this is just the initial damage assessment that then gets modified in the next phase of the process, where when we have more information about insurance claims and things like that, we then start to modify the preliminary damage assessment. So we're at initial IDA, then it moves to PDA, the preliminary damage assessment, and then the state submits it to the federal government, which then requires the approval of the president.
But in the short run, we still have to pay these people and
Correct.
yeah,
Which
so the
is
money's
why
out the door.
Because you have to spend it for the reimbursement.
Exactly. It's a reimbursement program, which is why this town meeting action between Article 1 and Article 4 needs to take place. We need to make sure we have the funding available in our snow and ice budget to cover all of our costs up front, but we are working on trying to seek some relief if it's available.
So if we pay it and the money comes in, does it then dot line go to free cash?
Cash.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any questions on that?
Yeah, Wareham's and Plymouth,
Timing.
we're good.
It's
Just some
timing.
clarification. Did you say that every town in every county had to hit their threshold in order for any of the money to come out?
No, because some of these counties were not
Exactly.
impacted,
They weren't even,
but nope. Only the counties that were impacted that do hit the threshold, because if you look at the sum total of those thresholds, it's well over the 13
oh,
million,
easily.
right? And so if, for example, Bristol County or Worcester County had very minimal impacts from the storm, it's likely they're not gonna meet their thresholds, but Plymouth County's threshold is 2.5 million.
They're gonna hit it.
If collectively, the sum total of our 27 communities, if our costs are $5 million, then that full 5 million will count towards the state
So
threshold.
it was Franklin, Plymouth, and I thought it was Bristol that were the three, that was the jackpot area.
That was definitely the jackpot area. The other, so there's two parts to FEMA relief. One is called Public Assistance PA, which opens up the door for much more extensive relief dollars. But if the state does not, and that's why it says PA here, stands for Public Assistance, there is a secondary opportunity called SA, which is snow assistance. And so if the Commonwealth does not get awarded the public assistance, we still have the ability of applying for snow assistance. The thresholds are different. Snow assistance requires that your community exceed their historic levels, which
Good.
which FEMA has confirmed with National Weather Service that we have. So, but the eligible reimbursement or relief funding available under snow assistance is limited to 48 hours of your highest cost. So whatever consecutive 48 hours in which we incurred the highest volume of costs, that is what we could submit. So it's not for the full 5 or 6
But
days
it's something.
emergency, but it's something.
Al's turn, say something.
Yeah, Al? I
Yeah, I
see
just
you.
had a quick question. Thanks, Mary, for that detailed explanation. My question on the FEMA is, are these discretionary funds already budgeted, or do they require a federal declaration of a disaster?
So it would, there is a component of the statute called the Stafford Act that allows states to apply to the federal government, even though it's not a natural disaster, that it was a statewide declaration.
Right. So are we aware that FEMA, part of Homeland Security, has budgetary authority in the current budget for these funds? Yes or no?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so those were my 3 items. So with that being said, I'll take it
Can
over.
I ask one more question of you? In the past, you've given us one of those large sheets of our voting. Right, when Betsy and I were on it. Yes,
This thing right here?
yeah, that, can we get an updated one?
Sure,
Is it out there on the web that we can find?
this is
We were at the
Rainey's.
select board meeting yesterday and I could not from memory, what we voted on what article.
Well, we had the notes, but the numbers had changed.
Yeah,
So when they were looking at 22 for Pixie's article,
it used to be something else.
it used to be another number. When we voted it, it was before we renumbered
Oh, because
everything.
we dropped a couple of articles
Yeah,
out of the
right,
warrant.
Right, so I thought we
We could
had
respond
passed it.
quickly.
I see, I see.
Rainey was right.
Chart would be helpful.
We voted against it. I just don't remember.
Not all of us voted against it.
Nope, that's fine, but when Pixie's article for the moratorium on nuclear power plants, anybody was ringing any bells with anybody?
Yes,
We voted against it. I just can't remember the conversation as to why.
I can,
This is mine.
no, you have.
Chuck, do you
I
remember?
was here.
Giving it to me. Yeah, this is
Ash, do you
mine.
remember?
Wow. Talk about service.
I remember
so-
bringing it up. Isn't it raised like every year? We talk about it.
Well, we talked about different aspects, but this was just a moratorium, but it wasn't even namby-pamby. One person voted for it, Kathleen, and then somebody abstained, and then the rest of us voted against it, but obviously, so there was some high feelings on it.
No, it was 1-7, so 7 of you voted against it.
Right, but I don't remember
why they voted.
why we voted
We
against
have
it.
to look at the minutes.
Well, you
thought-
do remember?
Yeah,
Oh, good.
because you thought the possibility that nuclear could come back as a potential energy source.
In fact, Jay, I think you were one of the guys.
It was Mark that started that.
Mark
Started it, and JR, then, yeah, that makes sense.
Mark's fault.
The next thing we know,
Just
we're
concerned
back to
about-
nuclear energy business. Okay, great.
Concerned about limiting the potential for the ability to.
No, I think that's the same.
But we
thing.
can't do a best thing, right?
We could all have,
You know.
Okay, that makes sense. Does everybody have this piece of paper that I just got? Or am I holding onto all of them?
You're holding on. You're
Oh,
holding the other.
Sorry, I'm holding onto all of them. I'll take a picture and send it to everybody. Sorry, I got lost. That was driving me crazy last night because
So I definitely hear that.
my numbers weren't matching. And then it took me a while when Fred and I were listening to the conversation to understand, oh, we were going off a previous warrant that had a different numbering. There you go.
I forgot about that. You're right.
You voted no again?
Well, wait a minute.
Good choice.
But it just took me a minute to, what did you do? No, nothing. I'm sending a picture of this picture to everybody.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
I'm going to abstain from any discussion on this article.
Okey dokey.
Thank you.
Okay. So I am here to present Article 4 for annual town meeting, funding of salaries. And what I just distributed to all of you is a summary of the costs. So for fiscal year 27, personnel policies, positions in grades 1 through 15, the total estimated cost is outlined in the first section of this memo. So we're recommending a 2.25% general increase. This will impact, and it's important to note the numbers of employees. So this impacts 115 employees. I think our largest union is somewhere around 45 people. So there's, obviously a big difference when you're talking about a difference in the number of employees who are impacted. The next line describes an internal equity adjustment, which is pay compression. So this means that I have examined all 115 jobs, considering who has direct reports. So looking at the supervisors. So I examined the direct reports hourly wage compared to their supervisors' hourly wage to ensure that there is a meaningful difference between those two pay amounts. So it's important to do that. That's part of our equity adjustment efforts to maintain our compensation system. So the good news is that there's only 2 supervisors out of the whole group who would require a adjustment due to pay compression. The next line item is.
Can I ask what department? Obviously not.
Yes. One is in the police department and the other one is in the municipal services department.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So this is a tool that's used throughout the compensation practice. And what makes this group unique too is that the non-union employees don't have steps. So a union contract has a finite number of steps. There's distance between the steps. There's our most complex union is CPW for comparative purposes, but there's less than 50 employees in that union. And there are, I don't know how many unique jobs, say there's 18 unique jobs. There are many more unique jobs in the personnel policies. And they spread across every single department. And there's 15 different grades. So in our largest union, there are 8 steps and I think 8 grades. So that's why it's important that when we do the classification and compensation work, that we include all of our various compensation systems, because we do have 6 unions, 4 contracts, employee contracts. And then we have the management provision in the personnel policies and the non-management provision. And that encompasses 144 unique job titles. So it's a manual process and we're also collectively bargaining all of those union contracts at the same time.
That hasn't been completed yet, correct?
The collective bargaining?
Right.
Correct. So we have 3 settled contracts that we're bringing to the select board on Friday for that. So the order of operations is the select board prefers the finance committee to vote Article 4 before they see Article 4. And the opposite is true of collective bargaining. The select board will see the collective bargaining settlement agreements in executive session on Friday morning. And then they will review them in open session. And then once those have been reviewed in open session, then we'll schedule them to be presented to the finance committee the following week.
So are we gonna be getting these contracts the day of town meeting or
No,
next
You'll-
week?
you'll be reviewing the cost of the settlement agreements next week.
Next Thursday?
That's,
Next Thursday?
Tuesday. That's why we had
The 10th.
booked the 3rd and the 10th.
And with what drove those changes?
Yes, I will have a summary document that describes what drove the
Beautiful.
changes.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
and again, this was all scheduled during the week of the storm.
Sure,
So
that was good
you know,
times
we're
though.
playing catch up.
Yep,
Yeah.
that was great. By candlelight.
Like the light, exactly. So the next line item is internal equity as it relates to years of service. So again, this is a pay compression issue. So that's why they're both under the heading of internal equity adjustments. And this is language that exists in the personnel policies under the pay guidelines. So again, this is a regular practice. This impacts 15 employees. The good news here is that in 2021, December of 2021, I identified that there were 32 positions in the personnel policies that were paid below the minimum, below the midpoint of the range, despite the fact that individuals who were occupying those jobs had been doing so for 7 or more years. So we're making progress, and this is how we do it without a step system. So we've more than cut that in half. So now there's 15 employees who, with 7 or more years of service, who are below the midpoint of the range. And where the pay compression comes in is that the market changes dramatically from year to year. So when you look at how the market has been from 2021 through 2026, what the market will bear.
I want to get you some water. You want it out?
I'm out. I should have.
Here, give it to me. I'll go get you some.
Unless, I'll be fine. So,
I say.
oh, thank you. Thank you.
It's so dry in here.
It
Very
is super
good.
dry in here. So,
Outvote anybody?
thank you.
Thanks.
And further, this is the first time that we haven't had individuals receiving a years of service adjustment, who have been here for 15 or more years. So I think that's substantial. That's a significant change.
I think it's
So-
sad.
What's that?
I think it's sad
You think it's sad?
that you don't have employees that over 15 years.
No, that's not it. So,
Okay.
so thank you for asking that question. We have employees over 15 years, but they're all earning over the midpoint of the range.
Okay.
This is the first year that employees with 15 or more years of service, every single one of them is earning more than the midpoint, as they should. So that's a positive. We certainly have, I've been here for 18 years, for example. We certainly have people earning that. So we've got 11 people who have been in their positions for 7 to 10 years. But they're still earning below the midpoint, so we're recommending a 1% adjustment for those employees. And then we have 4 employees who have been in their position for 10 to 14 years. And they're still below the midpoint of the range for fiscal year 27, so we're recommending a 2% increase. So there's 15 total employees there. And then the next line item is a job evaluation adjustment. And that is job evaluation adjustments are handled when we have new positions in the range. And thank you. We look at the job. Thank you. We look at the job description and we update that accordingly. And then we use our job analysis questionnaire to evaluate the value of the job from a point factor system, and then we place it in the range. The same thing happens when we have a job that has additional duties associated with it in a new fiscal year. So we look at the job description, we create the job analysis questionnaire, and we evaluate the job to determine whether or not that job should remain given the new duties. If they're substantial enough, does it warrant a reclassification of that job into a higher grade? And that's what we found with this particular job. So the change in the job that is stated here under the job evaluation adjustment section is that in fiscal year 26, the job did not have supervisory duties. It's being proposed that it will have supervisory duties. And it will be overseeing a subdivision of that department, which will consist of 9 employees. So that's a substantial change in job duties. And then we have, and that cost is being funded through other funding sources for that job reevaluation. So the subtotal of the cost is $189,555. Other funding sources total $36,902 for a net cost for fiscal year 27 of $152,652.
What was the total percentage of the total salary outlet? What is that?
The change from one year to the next.
He's better than I.
No, I don't know the total, but Mary might know it in a minute.
While she's doing that, what's the other funding source?
We have
Is it enterprise?
We've got grants. We have water enterprise.
So enterprise and grants, okay.
Yep. We're not recommending a merit adjustment pool this year. Given the costs that we're facing. In other years, we've had both a general increase and a merit increase. We are recommending the internal equity adjustments that I just described and the job evaluation adjustment.
So, the answer to your question, Kathleen, is 2.59% on the whole. So the majority of the folks, are receiving 2.25% COLA. And then these additional adjustments that Gina just explained added into that mix results in a 2.59% increase in total salaries over FY 26.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks. Any questions?
We have a motion for
Move to approve Article 4, funding of salaries.
Second.
in the amount of 152,652.67. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna start. Al,
L.I.
Ashley,
Ashley, I.
Teddy,
Aye.
Chuck, I.
J.R.I.
Brent abstain.
Betsy, I.
Kathleen, I.
Okay,
So
Thank
that was 801.
Yep.
No, I'm sorry, 701, because Mark dropped off.
Yeah.
Mark Chapko.
Wonderful. So I think that's all we have for this evening, but what remains for you guys for town meeting is a couple of things. So next week, we will be talking about collective bargaining, which encompasses 2 articles. One is in the special, Article 7 in the special. Because our contracts expired on June 30, 2025, the year that we are in right now is the first year of the new contract, which would mean that we would owe retro wages to our employees based on the settlement. So we need to fund retro wages using free cash. So that will be Article 7 in the special for year 1 of the contract. And then year 2 of the contract is Article 8 in the annual, which will fund year 2 of the collective bargaining agreements using raise and appropriate as the funding source. So we're going to try to take the 2 of those articles up next week, as Jeannie mentioned. And then should we have solid numbers for the snow and ice deficit, then we'll revote those 2 special town meeting articles, Article 1 and Article 4. Great. That, as far as I'm aware, Rainey completes everything for town meeting, correct?
Just in the nick of time.
No.
Well, that's why we get
We
it
slide
done
into
a little-
home base
get it done a
sometimes.
little early, to give us the ability to zig and zag. So we're not,
How many of the collective bargaining
I was just
agreements
thinking-
do you think you'll have?
You read my mind. We currently have 3 settled agreements. There are 2 more outstanding. that, one has been voted, we're just waiting for the document. The other one, they have come back and they want more dates. So with said, it's, we're running out of time. So I'm getting them more dates. And
So-
so dates include, the week leading up to town meeting.
We're trying to drive them to the finish line.
Okay, yeah, because then they won't get their
Exactly.
retro,
Exactly.
so they'll be looking for that.
Right, and I've made that abundantly clear. And the other unit we just started.
Motivation.
Yes,
So I have a question for me, the unfortunate personnel change at the town office.
Yeah.
Is that, do you think that's a single case, or do you think we should look forward to more of that happening?
I think it's a single case.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Is it an overworked situation?
Job well hard.
Yeah, I know it's, yeah.
And there's no real relief inside. Nothing that's predictable.
Yeah.
It's just getting a lot.
Okay, well, that's no fun. All right, any questions from the front here? Everybody bit remote, you're all set? Watch your commute there, all of you.
He's in Boston.
From there into the kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
except for Ashley.
Ashley's
Yeah.
in Boston.
Oh,
know.
after, we're still in Boston.
Yeah, yep, freezing rain, I know.
Thank you for taking the time to join us.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay,
Just stay there.
Motion to
I stayed
adjourn.
last night, so I gotta go home. I gotta go home. All right, good to see you all.
all right.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Out, ask for it. See ya, bye, kids.